So you got any questions?
Oh yeah. Well, as I think I told you, I'm working on a Sonata,
Hmm.
and yeah, I find it really hard working through kind of against the model.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's good. But in a way, it's like I find it hard to switch from kind of what I hear in my head to then fitting that into the model, and being it in the dominant or stage and that type of thing. So, but it's
Yeah.
something I think I have to work through,
Yeah.
and I have to, I guess, like I get into some composing, and then I'm kind of looking at it. Okay, then I step back and I go, okay, so how does this fit into the model? And so it's almost like a disconnect between how I'm composing kind of naturally, and then kind of trying to fit that into the model or the constructs that you're teaching in your course.
Yeah. So I guess with the model, it's one of those things that feel free to deviate. If something strikes you as I really want to continue this phrase, or I really feel like I need to go in this direction, I mean, it's still your composition. You can do whatever you want with it. There's a few points that I deviate from the model because and actually I go back and forth. Like I've gone back and I made changes, tried to make it closer to the model, and then I'm kind of like, I don't know if I like that. I think I kind of like the original better. But for the course purposes, like I probably should stick to the exact model. And there's an example in the transition where this, um, let's see, that part. It's hard to like, let's see, it's hard to think of these things in the middle. I need to like work into them. That part. He repeats that 3 times or 2 times. He repeats it. I didn't do it. I just kind of had my little half cadence into the subordinate theme, and I felt musically it made more sense with the lines that I was writing. So that's an example of the kind of deviation that seems okay in terms of you still stick to I guess the essence of the model, um, but you can pull and push things slightly differently. But it's also part of the learning process is understanding
Yeah.
Beethoven's sense of proportion and the way he can expand lines and contract lines and things like that. So
Yeah, so last week I asked about whether to start with the subordinate theme and then the transition, and or do the transition kind of naturally flowing from the period at the beginning.
yeah,
And you suggested doing the subordinate because you can use some looser methods in the transition.
and it gives you a
And
goal. Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I tried that and it didn't really work.
Hmm.
Well, I can't say it didn't work. It did not work because I guess, as I said, in the process of composing, I kind of lose the connection to the constructs,
Yeah.
you know. So I'm kind of, I guess I'm back to the transition part where I'm just trying to get it to flow somewhat naturally from the opening period.
Um,
And then somehow I guess I'll have to, but this is something like I'm fairly new. I mean, I've been in music many years, but trying to work in a more rigorous fashion using these methods, like I'm like in grade 1 or 2, right? So,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
also my piano is not great either. So, like, it's a lot to expect all at once,
Are you
you know?
using software to compose? Or are you composing by hand?
Finale.
Finale. Okay.
Yeah. And
Well,
I have Cubase, but I mean, I'm not there yet because I'm trying to work on the composition first. And then, when I get to a point where I've got something to develop further, I'll move it into Cubase and try and, finish it there. But
yeah. Okay, so I guess in my mind, anything when you're learning, anything you can split up into separate tasks can make the process easier. So you can break it down a
right.
little bit. simpler. So if you are, if you're trying to do everything all at once, you're going to overwhelm, your synapses or whatever, and it's just going to feel like I just don't quite get what I'm trying to do. Whereas if you can say, okay, I've got my starting point, right? Let's just say it's F minor, and then I've got my ending point, which is going to be A flat major. Now Beethoven lands on the E flat 7. He's on the dominant chord. He's doing the dominant pedal.
Right.
And harmonically, you could say, could be your first stage in terms of how am I going to get from F minor to A flat major, or in this case, E flat 7. So there we've got our first task is what is the process of modulating here? Now,
Mm-hmm.
the 3 is the most common minor key subordinate key. So I guess minor mode subordinate key for sonata form. So we're in F minor. Going to A flat major is really the first level default in terms of minor mode sonata form.
Right.
So it's probably beneficial to work out some potential paths that we could use. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull up a thing here that I'm going to share my screen, so we could use some of the tools from the workbook.
I'm looking at your Sonata form book, and
The original Sonata form book, or the 201 workbook?
the original one.
Okay.
I haven't delved into the 201 yet.
You may want to, you know what, they're effectively similar in terms of outlook, but the 201, I've developed the ideas from the original ebook significantly. And if you're going through the ebook, I recommend just putting the ebook down and going straight into the 201 course. Because,
Okay.
for instance, I expand significantly on the ideas of loosening techniques. I talk at much greater length about the use of harmony in sonata form. We go over modulation again, kind of as what's the word I'm looking for? Like a summary of all the modulation that we covered in the 101 course. However, it's taken a little bit further. So, and it's a good.
Well, maybe that's where I can, maybe start looking at that. Might move me further along.
Yes, I think that could be what's causing some confusion, is because that book I wrote, and I kind of had these ideas of modeling and things like that, but I hadn't really worked out exactly how I wanted to do it.
Because I was looking at the subordinate theme, and I don't know, has that changed in your what you called the subordinate theme, which starts at bar 21?
No, the themes, we're modeling the same piece. So it's Beethoven Sonata No. 1 and Movement 1, and the themes, nothing's changed from the pieces. It's more, how efficiently I am able to express the core concept that needs to be learned. And I've also introduced, can you see my screen right now?
Yes. Yep.
I've introduced these compositional maps. We break down much more significantly the sections in terms of how is Beethoven actually accomplishing this theme. So, so I guess we'll start with the subordinate theme here first. The subordinate theme is it's a really long thing. I think it's 29 measures. I can't remember the exact count, but it's significantly longer than the main theme, which should instantly tell you, okay, there's significant loosening here, and it's going to be really interesting to see exactly how Beethoven is accomplishing this within the piece. And if you look, I've got open here the compositional map, and all I'm doing is I'm simplifying things. So I'm taking a lot of the surface elements out
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
left hand, from the right hand, and trying to make it as pure as possible in terms of what's going on. So, let's see, this
Yeah, I like that.
bass.
That's a good way of kind of just providing the structure and still being able to see, how it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
And kind of
I think it's
takes away some
really,
of the clutter.
it does. It takes away a lot of the
Yeah.
clutter.
Yeah.
So, let me minimize that. If you look at the actual basic idea, um, I'm calling it a basic idea. It's not the presentation phrase of the main theme. However, it's effectively functioning as a basic idea in a sentence would. He
Hmm.
repeats it. He repeats it twice, which is a form of loosening. Now, if we look at the compositional map here, I just put the chord, right? It's a 5/7 chord. He hits the flat 9, and then he basically does an arpeggio down.
Yeah.
And then to the 1 chord. And he's keeping that E flat pedal, so it's a 1/6/4 chord here. But I mean, really, he's got a basic idea that's just 5 and 1, 5 and 1, 5 and 1, and it's an inversion, somewhat of the basic idea. So if you've got the basic idea from the main theme, right? This is kind of the opposite. It's like a little inversion of it.
Hmm.
Now, so he repeats that twice, right? One thing I do want to point out, and I put this in the workbook, and this is why I think you need to look at the workbook because it'll really be some eye-opening things for you. If you think about his theme as sentential, meaning you've got a presentation of the ideas, you've got the basic idea, and it's repeated. Now it's looser because it's repeated twice. And
Hmm.
then you have a continuation phrase. Now the continuation phrase is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 measures, right? And
Yeah.
that's not even counting the expanded cadential progression, which itself is repeated. You can still put together in your mind, this is a sentence, it's just a greatly expanded. So as an exercise, something I like to do is recompose it in tight-knit form. So if I were to take his basic idea, repeat it once, write a continuation that moves into a cadential, and it's 8 measures, then you
Hmm.
can get your head wrapped around, okay, how could I compose a tight-knit theme and loosen it so that it fits the standard criteria of a more extended subordinate theme? So if you listen, let's see. Oh, sorry. I'm not a great pianist, and I haven't practiced this. And of course, my keyboard doesn't go up that high, but you get the concept.
Yeah. So it's like he's got layers, like he goes off. It's like a river, he goes off on these tributaries, but then he's got a way back to the river, and
Yeah, and
I
he's
keep on
got
going off. I keep on going on the tributaries, and then okay, where am I?
exactly, and that's one of the reasons I like to compose the subordinate theme first, and to think of the subordinate theme as a tight-knit theme that's being expanded and loosened and extended and manipulated versus just composing, right? If you just start writing, it's so easy, like you said, to get lost in those tributaries and lose the main river of
Yep.
idea. And
Yeah.
if you can start from a tight-knit theme and say, okay, this is my river. I've got a basic idea. Now I can do whatever I want with this basic idea. I mean, it could be, if we just do something simple, right?
Yeah.
and then we start to keep on whatever it is, you keep on moving from there. At least you've got a concept of where you are in the world in terms of, oh, I just deviated a little bit around the side, but now I'm back in the main river and I'm hitting the continuation, and we're going to continue moving on from there. And now it's like, okay, now I'm getting to the cadential section, and the cadence may not be a single measure, and in fact, Beethoven does these long, four-measure expanded cadences. You can see here these long runs. This is frustrating to work on this keyboard here because it doesn't. And that's an expanded cadential progression here that doesn't actually end up in an actual cadence. But you can look at that and say, okay, all he's done here is he's evaded the cadence. He's just repeating it. He's putting the left hand down an octave until finally he reaches cadence here. Then you've got a series of codas. But it's all logical, and it can all be minimized into a simple, tight-knit theme that you can then spend the time to expand upon.
Yeah, so I often, look at this type of thing and say, how did he do it? Which part came first and that type of thing. And so some of these extended cadences and things, like, is it purely logic driven, or did he just say, well, I'm just going to add another codetta here, or but using, I think he had the way of doing it seamlessly,
Well, okay, so this is where it gets tricky. It's hard to know exactly what Beethoven did. I mean, there are some sketches, and in fact, I don't have the book. I should get it again from the library just to get some images from it. But the way Beethoven sketched the main theme is it leads into a transition that's just like triplets. This kind of stuff for like 10 or 15 measures. He completely abandoned that. He just didn't use it at all. So, his process of coming to this point, I'm not quite sure. But for our process of learning it, we can basically say whatever. I mean, we can pretend, for instance, that Beethoven said, I want to start with this long scale. And then he harmonized it underneath. But if you look at this is not some crazy, new invention of a cadence here. It's 1-6, 2-6, 5-6-4, actually 5-4-2 in the next one, and then another repeat of that thing. It's a standard cadential progression. So my guess is he knew he wanted some kind of big cadence to confirm the subordinate key, and he just put the two together. He's like, well, I kind of know the chords I want already because it's a cadence. And, maybe he was thinking something scalar, and maybe he sat there for a couple minutes and... whatever it is.
So part of my issue is the opening period I have doesn't follow the pattern in terms of it going up and then down.
Yeah.
It's kind of more just moves around the middle areas. So I find that kind of hampers me a bit in terms of trying to pattern it after Beethoven's model. And there's another piece by Mozart. He does the same. It's the same thing. Like, it's kind of like a what do you call those things? An arpeggio up,
Oh, it's called a Mannheim rocket. Something like that, like these little big opening. You hear that all the time, actually, in Mozart and Haydn. It was like kind of a
Yeah,
standard go-to opening idea kind of thing, you know?
yeah. So like when you said the subordinate theme just kind of goes back down the opposite way, like I can't do that in mine
Well,
because
and this is a good example, though, of how can you find internal consistency between the two. Not you don't necessarily have to invert the idea. Let's see. So we're in. Um,
uh, those chord labels may not be right.
well, okay. Well, we'll get into some issues here. First, let me say that it's helpful to try to think about the standard notation in terms of key signatures. So A minor, you're never going to see an A flat note, or not never, but in most cases it's going to be a G sharp, um, because that's
Oh,
really the G is raised, the A is never flattened for the scale. So keeping consistencies like that, those will help. And then there's also just some other things to think about here. So for instance, if you have a lower neighbor, a chromatic lower neighbor in particular, if you lower, if you flatten the note, then you have to put another natural right here. Whereas if this was a G sharp, you wouldn't have to put a natural next to the A. So it's just a
okay.
readability issue. You'll see if you start writing music for players, those kind of things really can make a difference for performance,
Hmm.
especially on sight reading or first couple of reads. Um,
Okay.
let's see. So, and then in terms of labeling here, I mean, you're generally seem to be getting it right. Although this, let's see.
Well, Finale, I think, does a bit of an interpretation based on the notes, and I
Oh,
don't
it
know if
doesn't
it.
change it. See, I don't use finale. The inversions, though, you're just not putting in the inversion here. So it's a 1/6 chord, and then you've got a
It's A minor to E, basically.
yeah. Um, so and you're kind of moving up here through the inversion. So and then you've got. Let's see. See that B sharp. It probably is just better to do a C.
Yeah, so I just basically following the what I wrote in the first section of the period.
Uh huh. Yeah, no, I mean, I like the sound of it. I'm just saying, notation wise, a B sharp is just a C. So
Oh, I see.
anytime you
Okay,
can
right.
simplify your notation, just as a general rule of thumb, try to make it as easy to comprehend and read as possible. So if you see a B sharp, ask yourself, is B sharp a part of this key signature? If it's not, is its enharmonic equivalent C a part of the key signature? And it is. Um,
Yeah, that's funny because I put those I input those notes on the keyboard, and Finale is what put them in there. So anyway, yeah,
notation
good point. I'll have to
software
look at that.
notation software is your enemy. Just don't ever forget that, because it tries to sabotage your notation all the time. It doesn't know really what to do. I mean, it kind of has an idea about key signatures, but not really. You always have to go back through um, and check it out. You know, make sure it's correct.
Yeah, I think I was confusing it a little.
Yeah. did you mean to have? Oh, that's an A flat. Sorry. This is exactly where I was talking about. Like these are A flats, but I'm just so used to seeing G sharp there that my mind. I was like, did you want that sound? But you actually meant that sound.
Yeah, I guess if I want some feedback on this type of thing, we're gonna have to do some cleanup first.
Well, no, I mean that's part of the feedback though is learning about proper notation, and how to prep scores. And actually, that's one of the modules within the Sonata form course. That's I think it's going to be like module 7. So once we finish up the sonata, or once we finish modeling Beethoven's sonata, then I'm going to talk a little bit about introductions and codas, because there really isn't. I mean, I guess you could make a case for a little tiny coda at the end of Beethoven's, but I don't think anybody really calls it that. But there's no introduction, there's no coda in this movement. So I'm going to do an additional module where we cover those. And then I'm going to do a module about preparing your score. And how do you get it ready for somebody to actually play this thing? Okay, let's talk about your main theme here for a second. I think you've got some good ideas. Let's see. This is a little clashy here. So you've got the A and you've got the G sharp. So that could possibly just be another chromatic lower neighbor. That would work. So something like this. And it's just...
Okay, so that's one thing. Yeah, I don't like them to clash, but sometimes I see compositions where there are clashing notes. But generally, I guess at this stage, maybe the rules should be like.
Well, I mean, there's clash. Obviously, there's clashes through all of music. They happen all the time. There's nothing inherently wrong with the clash. It's just something to understand that you're doing. So if you like that sound, it's got a sound. It's got its own character. However, in this situation, I think because it's a 1 to 5 to 1 kind of movement, for you to put the tonic in the melody over the 5 chord just sounds confused. Not that you're confused, but the melody sounds confused. It doesn't know really what it wants to do at this point. And I also think because you have a lower chromatic neighbor right here, it matches a little bit better. So the melody, let's see. To my ear, the lower chromatic neighbor works a little bit better there.
Okay.
But you could change it to an upper neighbor, something like that. Or you get rid of it.
What started this whole thing was almost just noodling around and then, thinking of Beethoven's Furry Lees.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where that little half step down, came from. And that's part of the character of the piece, I guess.
Yeah,
but,
that is that half step. It's kind of the core idea within the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, and you develop that half step all over the place. You're doing that everywhere, but right there you're not doing it. So it seems inconsistent considering the rest of the melody.
Right.
Mm. So I think this all sounds fine. Also, this I wouldn't necessarily. This left hand feels a little choppy. Like my hand wants to do other things to add a little bit more to it. So what
it's just a starting point. I think it needs to be kind of. I'm not sure it's the right term, but refined or nuanced a bit, so it's not
Definitely,
just
the
the
left hand.
blop 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 blop.
I like to think of
Yeah,
the left hand as like, or at least accompanimental figures. So whatever. I mean, you could have the accompaniment in the right hand, but it's kind of an iterative process. So you start
yeah.
off. I sometimes I won't even write notes for the left hand. I just write Roman numerals, or I just write a chord name, or I'll just write a block chord. So and then you don't necessarily lock your ear into something too early,
Right. Yeah.
because this may work. Oh, sorry. Or you may say, what, I don't like starting in first inversion, and maybe it works better here. Something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
so so the process of doing that for me is, I'll go back and like I kind of do a first pass and then I'll go back, and sometimes the second pass has implications for other parts of the piece,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So you're constantly in this, it's like you're testing the system, and then you regressively have to go back and you end up departing from where you started at the beginning,
Yeah, it's
So
this
it
constant
evolves.
this constant composition, recomposition, back and forth. You
Yeah,
know.
because when you look at Beethoven's piece, like when you just put the basic chords there, it's pretty plain. But
Oh yeah.
he really made it dance, by the way he configured the chords in terms of the timing and stuff like that. Like he really took something really kind of plain and basic and made it sound a lot more lively.
It's true,
Yeah.
and part of the difficulty is trying to figure out how to make your own model interesting, or your own piece off of the model interesting, and not sound exactly the same.
Yeah.
So where you may, uh, he may be doing a thing. It's like, well, you could just copy that. There's nothing wrong with copying it, kind of learning that style. But it's like, could you do something new? Is there another, a completely different style that works? Would it
Hmm.
work as a single melodic line? You can start to experiment, but the core of what is there musically doesn't change. I mean, you're still working from a map like this. Oh, this is almost like a schema in your mind. It's like an abstraction of the music. And that's why I like to start with as abstract as I can here. Usually a melody and some basic block chords. Um, and
So I've got
Some
it
an
labeled as a
example.
sentence there. Is it? I thought it was a period though. Did I label that wrong?
No, this seems like a sentence to me. So you've got, and then you
Okay, so
have,
it is
that's
a
the
period.
basic idea, right?
Right.
And it's effectively a kind of a 1-5 line. You get the six in there. Then you've got um, a repetition, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of feels like it's an exact repetition because harmonically,
Yeah.
I mean, or maybe it's more of a statement response repetition, because I guess you're switching these around, so you're ending on a half cadence right here. Not technically a traditional half cadence because you have a seventh and half cadences, as we know, generally don't involve the seventh. That's a classical thing, though. You're not going to see that in Mahler or something. He ends in whatever he wants. But and then you go into a continuation here, and you can tell it's continuation because you're fragmenting this
That's right.
idea.
Yeah.
Um, and then you're ending there on a half cadence.
Yeah.
Um, Now, it's technically, once again, it's not a pure half cadence because for it to be a key defining half cadence in the classical idiom, it should be root position. And by having the B in the bass, you're actually not in root position there. Now, to our modern ears, it doesn't really make a difference. We can hear that as that's a 5 chord. It's defining the key, but it's not defining it extremely powerfully. You know, if you compare, if you did this, it doesn't feel like that's it. Whereas if you compare it to, let's see, feels a little bit stronger because you got that E in the bass versus feels even stronger, right? That this is tonic, and that's really what we're doing there with the half cadence. We're still saying that we're in this key of A minor, but we're not saying it very definitively. Versus if you end on a authentic cadence or a perfect authentic cadence with the one in the melody, it's just varying degrees of strength. So I just wanted to point that out. Nothing wrong
No,
with
that's a good point. Yeah. I guess when I come to those things, I just kind of use my ear more than my theory knowledge, and I'm trying to, leave it so that you're expecting something to come afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I
which
think
is
by the nature
of it basically is.
By the nature of it being a 5 chord, you're going to expect something more, regardless. I mean, if you put it here, you're really building up the expectation that it's going to go a first inversion 1 chord. Here, though, is, to my ear, I mean, you're still expecting this, right? Now, it's interesting that Beethoven doesn't do that. He goes from here to here. And that's part of the loosening of the transition. And that's really where he starts the modulatory process to the next key. But let's look at your transitions. We haven't really... So you got... Okay, so the biggest problem here at this point is that because you don't have that goal of the subordinate theme and you don't quite understand where you want to take this, it meanders a little bit too much in tonic here. I mean, you're really confirming over and over again that we're still in A minor. Now, there are non-modulating transitions. But most of the time, it's still, they know where they're going, and they're going to either the dominant or they're going to the 3 chord if it's in a minor, or minor 5 is also pretty common. So, as a key area. But if you were to, let's say, pick a different key here, right? We're in A minor, so the first level default is going to be C major. Then automatically okay, well, prior to starting my subordinate theme, I've got to hit a G chord or a G7 chord of some sort because it needs to feel like we've now reached this new key somewhere. So
I tried that. If you look further on, there is a G one there. I did several of these.
Oh, I see. You continue down the line here. Let's see. Oh, here we go.
It's in a major.
Okay, let's see what you tried. Let's see.
No, it's not. It's the next.
I'm just trying to. You're in C major right here.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess let's back up first because there's some things I want to talk about with this
Okay.
harmonically that's going on. But let's just as an exercise try to take this and figure out what we can do with it. So, I'm not sure. Are you meaning that to be your melody and this is accompaniment up here, or is the right hand accompaniment, or is the right hand the melody?
Yeah, it's kind of not very definite in that respect, is it?
No, it kind of feels like you want that going, and
No, yeah, I think I need another layer in there for the melody somewhere.
well, this is a
Probably
perfect
the
point
right hand.
to abstract it and say, okay, I don't know if you've got a melody yet here that you're following. Now, it's common to use material from the main theme within the transition. So you could take some core concepts here, like that kind of idea, and try to come up with a melody that is both similar but also modulating. Um,
Hmm.
so at this point, what I think we really want to do is backwards plan a little bit in terms
Yeah.
of we're going from A minor to C major, and what's the best way to accomplish that. So I'm going to pull up the workbook here, and if we look at um, these charts, I'm not sure if you've gotten into these charts yet, but these are the kind of the modulation cheat sheet, if you will.
Okay, yeah, I've seen them before, and I've seen. I haven't looked at them recently though, but
Okay.
so that's something I've got to get a little more in depth on for sure.
Yeah. So, and this is a good exercise to do because it really starts you getting thinking harmonically in new ways. Because you're matching up what you can do with the other chord charts, and I'm going to pull the chord charts up as well.
Okay.
Just so we're kind of working from. Let's see. Very large, a little smaller. Yeah, smaller. Okay. So we've got our charts, and I'm actually going to put the minor one up top because we're starting in minor. Let's keep our minds straight here. And if you look here, we're using the same terminology in terms of we're using functional harmony.
Hmm.
Got too many things open here. So we're in 1 right now. We're in A minor. And
Right.
even though we ended up on a 5 chord, that 5 chord is in fact confirming 1, A minor. So what we need to do now is we need to find a path to 3. And you can see why 3 is a very common chord to move to, or a common key area to move to within minor sonata form. And it's because look at all these shared chords between the two. So if I'm in 3 as a key area, and this can be a little confusing if you can't instantly think of what these chords are, So I'll just spell them out here right now. One one in A minor is the same as the sixth chord in C major.
C.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then two in A minor, at least a triad wise, is the same as a seven in C major.
Right.
And you go on up the scale here. So a 3 in A minor is the one chord in C major. A 4 is the two chord, and so on. So you can see why that's the first level default in terms of where you go. Everything is pulling towards that C major. And in fact,
Right.
a lot of minor mode sonatas spend almost more time in major modes. Because the subordinate theme is usually more expansive than the main theme. Now, once you get into development sections, you can start to go all over the place, and developments tend to focus on minor mode keys. However, just something to kind of keep in mind. So
Beethoven's example, we have F minor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in his transition, is that maybe I'm getting ahead. I'll just let you continue, but I guess these are the things that are kind of.
So let's look at what Beethoven does for his transition. Let me it's this workbook here. So we're in F minor at this point, right? And he confirms that F minor with a half cadence, so C major. Now, what Beethoven does at that point is he actually does what's called chromatic modulation by using a C minor chord, right? So he's here. He only has to move by half step. So your ear is going to hear that as a smooth movement. Now, the minor 5 is part of the natural minor in F minor, but it's not normally what you think of harmonically as being a part of F minor. So instantly, we're transported slightly away from F minor. So that's why I labeled this as the modulating point right here. It's right there that he decides he's going to be in A flat major. But because it's only a movement by a half step, it still sounds very smooth. And there's other reasons why it sounds very smooth as well. It's because he moves into an F minor chord after that in inversion. So sorry. He moves into a sequential harmonic progression here. So, and this is the descending fifth, ascending fourth progression. You hear it all the time.
Okay.
You know, you hear those chords over and over again because it's the circle of fifths. It's like the most fundamental progression in all of music, and he uses it all over the place. In fact, in the sonata. So
that removes some of the mystery in itself.
That does remove a lot of the mystery. Now, doing sequences, and I talk about sequences in the book a little bit here, and obviously in the videos in terms of, I find the best way to do it is to figure out the actual voice leading first in this abstract way, just block chords. And then from there, you can actually figure out what you're going to do. So if you look at this, you know, E flat going to D flat, stays D flat, here goes to C. A, held over, moves to G, and then back up to A. Here he's got the F, E flat, C, B flat, A, right? So I just called out basically all the little, stepwise movement that he's doing. But then let's look at what I did for my transition. You can instantly hear it's the same. I didn't have to think too hard about what I'm doing voice leading wise. I've already figured that out. Now it's just a matter of how does Beethoven put together his melodic elements. And you can see he's basically got this little figure jumping around within the different voices. So I picked the top voice and I picked the tenor right here, but I could have just as easily put it here in the alto. So I could have done something like. It didn't sound as nice to me as. I like this half step sound better than the A flat to G. So that's just something that makes handling that a little bit easier. But you see what it does is it sets us up for this sound of A flat major in our ear, and then he backs it up with a bunch of half cadences. And at that point, we feel that we are now not in F minor. We feel like we are, especially after this one. We're in A flat major. He's cemented us into A flat major. But he did it in a very smooth way. He used the same basic idea. Right? It sounds exactly the same, but it's been transposed to C minor. The reason C minor works is because of the half-step chromatic modulation, and he still keeps it feeling smooth. This C minor is still a continuation harmonically of this sequence. So it feels like the sequence starts here, F minor to B flat minor to E flat 7 to A flat. But if you back it up one, C minor is part of that sequence.
Yeah.
You know, and so on. So that's why I like backwards planning in terms of we can look at the techniques Beethoven is using. He's using a sequence, a harmonic sequence. He's using chromatic modulation. He's got evaded cadences right here. This is a cadence that's, well, I guess it's not necessarily evaded. It's just kind of repeated because he does have cadence right here. It's just technically, that's a half cadence. But he decides to strengthen it just by repeating it over and over again. Oh, sorry. So that gives us a goal now. So now we can say, okay, let's look at your piece again. And we know we want to go to C major, right? And I may have to write some of this down here.
So C major for the subordinate, is that what we're aiming for here?
Is what we're aiming here. That's what you call the first level default. And I didn't get into that term in the original Sonata form book because I had read the book where that comes from. But it comes from a book called Sonata Theory by these two guys, Tepekoski and Darcy. And it's just kind of a competing / complementary theory to William Kaplan's classical form. And what they say is that if we look at sonata form not as this, crusty, model that we have to follow, like, this is the A theme and this is the B theme and blah, blah, blah. And in fact, it's what they call dialogic. So it's in dialogue with all the other sonata form music that's out there. And composers have a shared language of compositional choices. And the most common choice is always called the first level default. So in a major sonata, the first level default for your subordinate theme is always 5. That's, 1 moving to 5 is kind of the quintessential sonata form harmonic plan. In a minor key, however, it's 1 moving to 3. That's the most quintessential. 5 is actually a second level default. So moving to minor 5 is a second level default. And then anything beyond that, you can have, third level defaults and so on. But at a certain point, it gets to what they call deformations. So they are, it's not a bad thing, it's just a composer has chosen to completely deviate from any suspected norms and do something completely different. And that's usually the most interesting stuff that you see. Beethoven will do that, Haydn will do that, Mahler does that. It's these deliberate choices to not do what is expected for some rhetorical reason or programmatic reason or just because they were curious about what it's going to end up sounding like. So
Right.
like when Beethoven starts in or starts in C major in the Waldstein piano sonata and then eventually moves to E major, that's not a first level default. That's a major 3 in a major key sonata. However, it's very cool sounding, very interesting. That's what you would call a deformation.
Okay.
So I kind of got off track there. And
No, it's interesting because, well, anyway, it's a bit of a relief for me knowing that now I have this C major to kind of work through,
you've
work
got a
towards
harmonical, yeah.
for the transition. So that's good.
Yeah. So and now too, let's put this in here, so we could see, and we'll just put an actual C major chord. Although you could always end up on the 5 chord. And we want to end up here. So you could kind of as an exercise in using the sequence, right? You could use the sequence here and say, okay, how can I get to that sequence? So let's do the sequence here. I'll write it out real quick, and we don't have to start the sequence on 1, but I'll this is kind of hard to. I'll just do it in the right hand. I'll just start it on 1 so you can see the whole sequence. So normally we start on 1, and then we move to 4, and I'll just put this in root position so the voice leading is not going to look too great. Then 7, then 3, then 6, 2, 5, 1. Right? Those are all the chords. I'll write those out here. So 1, 4, 7. 7. What did I do there? Three, 6, 2, 5, 1. Okay, so we've got that. Now we could do some things here to make this better voice leading. And it's really as simple as just moving these voices up so that we've got a smooth look to it. I mean, that's kind of the core concept of voice leading, is that it looks smooth. There's all sorts of rules with parallels, octaves, and parallel fifths. Don't worry too much about that right now. For the time being, just try to get it in as tight a group as possible, voice leading wise. So if we listen to this. I'm going to speed that up a little bit. It's kind of slow. Okay, so we've got that. And now we could even just put this in here. And we already have kind of a goal. Now, if we were to do what Beethoven does, right? He moves to a minor 5 chord, which is the same as the 3 chord, right? And you can see here it actually kind of works. If we look at the charts, it's minor, 3 can move to 4. So if we wanted to, we could even, let me put these a little closer. If we wanted to, we could even do something like this. So if we were to, I'll just set the key here. Right, so there's our half cadence. And then now we're a minor 3, that's a chromatic modulation. That it doesn't feel too smooth going to the 4 chord there. I'm not sure if I necessarily like that. So we could choose another chord that could lead into the 7. If we look, we could do a 2 chord. 2 can lead to 7. So let's see. Don't necessarily like that one either. So why don't we try going a little more functional sounding here? And actually, this is kind of what Beethoven does, is he goes to an inversion of the original 1 chord. So if you look, this F minor theoretically would be 1. In this case, though, it's not a 1 anymore, it's a 6 chord. And that is the case here, we could do that. But what's nice about this is that we have the root movement of a 5th. So but this chord doesn't really work there. You can see I'm going back and forth. I'm changing. I'm just coming up with this right now as we go. Obviously, I'm trying to follow. Where's the add bar here?
No, but it's a good way to do it because
follow Beethoven's models still.
Yeah.
So we could go to a 4 chord here. And now we are back in the sequence. So we've now modulated without having to think too much about, let me delete these over here, without having to think too much about the process that we use to modulate. I mean, we modulated with a chromatic half step here, chromatic modulation, and we just figured out a way to get into the sequence. And sequences are extremely common in transitions because they're a little bit harmonically unstable. You can change things up. Like, for instance, we could still add a 5, a 6 right here. Now, we may not want to do that because that'll make us sound like we're back in A minor. But we could do it here. You know, let's see what that sounds like. So, in fact, I'm going to do bass notes down here.
Yeah.
Just so you can hear the full harmony. Let's see. So let's listen.
No, it sounded a bit out of place.
Sounded a bit out of place. And that's where it is. It's kind of experimentation, and you're in the learning phase right now. And I mean, we're all in the learning phase. We're all constantly learning, and it's just like, hey, what is this going to sound like?
But it still has a minor feel to it. That maybe it's because you're just doing the block chords. I don't know. It sounds.
Well, okay. So now, if we are to take this and try to use it with your original idea, right? What I'm going to do.
This is the transition part. Sorry, I was thinking we were. I got mixed up with the goal, the subordinate theme, which is in the C major, right?
Yes,
has a
C major,
more uplifting sound.
Yeah, C major. So we're attempting to go to C major from A minor, and
Right.
you're still hearing the A minor in your ear. But that's fine because we're going to then move into an entire subordinate theme whose goal is to, what did I just do? Whose goal is to confirm that C major key. So all we've done is we've modulated. We haven't confirmed anything at this point. I mean, we technically have what looks kind of cadential here, but it's not confirming any theme that we've had prior to this. We've just worked our way into it.
Right.
So, but if we this is not making a thing here. So let me, I'm going to take these chords now. I'm going to place them down here. So we've got space to write our melody. And here we've got some things to work with. So we've got the these kind of motives going on. You've got so we can just pick one of those and try to develop here. So this is the way you end it. Oh, there's a good example. See, Sibelius put an E flat, but really we don't want that. We want a D sharp. Now these are eighth notes.
So that's, I guess, Finale's doing the same thing for me.
It does the same thing. Yeah. So we want it to be as clear theoretically as possible. So theory-wise, what are we thinking here? So that's why I like to annotate my score.
I just assumed Finale had all that built in, but I guess that's a wrong assumption. So
that is, yeah. But, and your music notation software is your enemy. Just remember that, and you're constantly in battle with it.
Yeah.
So okay.
I thought it was my friend.
Yeah. No. So this is where we end. And now it's a little fast. No, we're going to be adding the melody here. So we could take just whatever. There we go. See another, and you see why that's difficult to read is with the E flat moving back to E natural versus if I do this, it gets rid of that natural, and you see that it's actually a half step away. It just feels a lot more comfortable to read.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's going to sound like. Probably not very good. That's a little too around E flat there. Let's see.
That sounds a bit like Beethoven's.
It does, yeah.
Okay, so I see what you're doing here. So now you're taking that kind of melody and now putting it into the structure of this sequence.
Putting it
so
in harmonically.
Follow the chords.
I see an issue already with what I'm doing here. The reason I don't think it's working in my ear is because it feels like we're trying to really go back to A minor here. We do have an A minor chord, so melodically, you don't want to push yourself too far in a direction. So we could do something like this. So let's just hear what this sounds like. Okay, so that doesn't sound too bad. I mean, it doesn't sound like we're stressing the A minor because we're really making a thing of the G, a G natural here. If this was a G sharp, just making that little change, even with the G or the G natural in the left hand, I bet it's going to sound like we're going back to A minor. Even though you've got the clash here, just putting that G natural in the melody really makes us feel like we're no longer in A minor.
Yeah.
And then if
And that's
let's
one of my biggest challenges is trying to get out of. I keep on kind of getting caught in that one kind of mode, and trying to find a way out without making it sound too abrupt or clunky is.
uh-huh.
And I think that's what you're helping me to move towards, is that work on that transition.
That's it. And backwards
Take the
planning.
guesswork out
It's
of it.
I mean it's the same way. It's the same way you plan any kind of major operation, right? You don't start with I'm here. My next step is, like if I want to plan a party, my next step is not go to the store and buy things. It's okay. The date of the party is the 10th. That means on the 9th, I need delivery of all the porta potties and chairs and stuff. And this is a major party. I mean, obviously, it's just get together and do whatever. But it's like you've got to think about, okay, I'm going to need 3 days in order for this thing to happen. I'm going to need 1 day for this thing to happen. So now I can schedule it in 1 day before. I can schedule this in 3 days before. I need 2 weeks in order to get the custom-made 3-tier cake. So now I've got to call that in at least 2 weeks beforehand. The
Hmm.
concept is the same harmonically. I need at least, to make the modulation feel real strong, I need probably at least 3 chords. So now I can move backwards 3 chords from the modulation goal, which is C major, and it can be, the simple that, or you could figure out another way to accomplish it. Um, but you're backwards planning. You've got a goal, and you're saying what is the best way to get to that goal, and not necessarily starting at okay, the next measure of the transition, I'm going to do this, and it's like, well, what do I do now? It's like, well, if you know where you're going, it becomes a little bit simpler.
Hmm.
So
So when you did your sonata, the one you have in the original workbook, was that basically what you walked through today? Was that basically the process you used, or?
no, it wasn't, and it was a little bit more of a kind of a slugfest for me getting through that because it's like I had to figure it out, and that's really where I came up with these ideas. One, I didn't follow Beethoven's sonata nearly as closely. It was more of a, I'm just composing. Now, by that point in my life, I composed a lot of music, so I had a good source and well of knowledge to lean on in terms of, partly it was a intellectual exercise, but part of it also was just me composing and doing what I normally do.
Hmm.
But as a learning process, I don't think it was as helpful as this process is. I'm not saying that you're always going to go through this process when you're composing. Sometimes you just go, like yesterday, I don't know if you can see my screenshot here, probably not.
Hmm. But
But
yeah.
yesterday I was just composing. I just started at bar 1 and I just kept going. I went to bar 2 and bar 3 and bar 4 and so on. Um, and sometimes I do that. But if it's a learning exercise, which is what this course is, the goal of this course is not that you finish your capstone project and you've got like a groundbreaking piano sonata number 1. It's more, how do we internalize what Beethoven has done in an efficient way? And it's by looking at endpoints and working up to these endpoints. It's by copying his actual progressions, copying his, sequences and things like that, copying his melodic shapes, his give and take in terms of energy levels within the piece, his accompaniment figures. And that's why I decided to redo it. Is really because I felt like the original book, while it's been helpful for a lot of people, didn't really explain everything that was going on in my mind when I was going through the sonata. And I don't think it explained everything that Beethoven was doing in his sonatas. So yeah, I would say at this point, abandon the book, stick to the course because you're going to learn a lot
Yeah.
more in the course.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
going to sign up for that,
yeah. So and
and I'll
then,
keep working on this piece.
uh,
And
oh, do you have to get going here?
oh, no, no, I just thought normally you wound up around one, but
Oh yeah, I mean, I just kind of want to try to finish this off.
Okay, sure.
So, and it's kind of funny that your idea here is similar to my idea. I mean, I've got a right, and you've got like these kind of half-step movements going on too. That it's kind of a similar transition here that we've got. But I just figured it'd be fun to try to finish this off.
Yeah.
So. So why don't we try to throw in a new idea?
So it sounds like you're going towards like doing the first part with the right hand and then maybe an echo with the left. Is that something you're kind of thinking of, or?
We could do that. We could write it on. I'm thinking just for simplicity's sake, we're going to just write this on the right hand right now, and then
Okay.
we can
And
change it
see
up
where it goes.
later.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, this is version 1.0, or this is really version 0.7 or whatever. You know, we're still in alpha
We're not
stage.
even at the one yet.
Yeah, we're not even in beta stage yet. We're still in alpha. So we're just getting our ideas down on paper, and things can change dramatically. We could throw away, we could write our transition. We could finish the entire sonata and be like, I really hate my transition. I'm just going to recompose it. Once you do that, though, you've got an entire movement of ideas to work from. You've already worked out all sorts of other ideas that you can pull in, and now it becomes integrated in a way that you couldn't have done from the beginning. You know, and
Right.
if you finish it, and then you've got, it's like you really came up with a really cool idea in your subordinate theme, or maybe you came up with a really cool idea in your development. You could come back here and say, I'm going to add that to the transition, so that people can look at that in the future or listen to it and say, hey, he's got an idea here in the transition that ended up in the development, but they won't know which one came first, chicken or the egg. You'll know. And maybe if you write a little paper about your piece, they'll know after that, but we'll just continue with the melody in the right hand for now. So we could do something simple like this. Let's see. So I'm just changing the harmony that idea fits under. And I may change how that works.
Mm-hmm.
That scale doesn't work, and the reason it doesn't work is because we've got the F, and the F is going to want to move to the E, which is not a part of the G scale here. So,
I see.
so I could do something like this. I don't know what this is going to sound like. I mean, I've got a vague idea, but let's just listen to what we've got so far.
Okay.
So we lose a little momentum there, but you know, I'm not too fond of it. What I'm trying to do is keep it a little continuational here. But let's try something
But
different.
it's amazing how the underlying chords, you can come up with different melodies or different configurations, but that underlying structure's still there.
It's still
So
there. Yeah, you've got a framework to work from. So
exactly, yeah.
So maybe we'll try to keep something like this. Let's see. Oop, I did it wrong there. bit there. Oh. Maybe we'll do something like this. And I know there's voice pressing here. These are just kind of placeholders at this point. So if we do... So now we've got our half cadence. I'll put in a little fermata there, and then here starts our subordinate theme, and we're just starting a C major. So now we've got this, and I think it's a good starting point.
Yeah.
And you can see, I mean, we can do all sorts of things here. Now, right here is just crying for the left hand to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. But when you keep listening to it, you realize, why it was there. So.
Yeah. So if we do something like that.
Yeah.
And obviously this is a very raw form right now. It's not very highly developed.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. Like even when you started, it seemed like it was leading towards that echo with the left after the previous bar with the right.
Yeah.
So it
And
seems to lend itself to that.
did I do that on purpose? No. Does it happen? Does your subconscious kind of force ideas to come out? Yes, it does happen. And it happens more the more you interact with the material that you've already got. So would that, if I just picked up your piece real quick and just started writing a transition, that may not have happened. But because we spent a lot of time kind of thinking about this and analyzing, and ideas started mulling over in my brain and things bouncing around in the back of my head, that just came out. And that's part of the kind of mystery of composition, is sometimes things just happen and you just accept it and move on,
Yeah, and it's like I kind of do all this type of thing, but I don't do it with that kind of theory or structure base to work from. And it's always hit or miss. But even this, like, it works, right? What you've done work. Like, I'm not saying it's going to stay like that, but it does work, right?
Yeah, it works. And like I said, if you want to come back and throw it away and start from scratch, that's fine. It's a good exercise to force yourself to rethink, how does this piece work and how can I make it work better? So here, okay, let's see what this sounds like. Here I just put in a simple kind of arpeggiated bass against the right hand. That's continuous movement in both hands. It's going to have a lot of energy. I don't know if I like it, So I think I'm going to stick to something maybe a little bit simpler.
I would add a couple of rests on those quarter notes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something I would try. Because, it's sometimes you go from one extreme to the other and then try and get back somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. So... I'm not too happy with that. I would probably spend some time reworking this and really thinking about what do I want to take it. I think we've gotten the point across, though, is that having a goal in mind really makes these, transition-type passages a little bit more understandable in terms of how do I accomplish it. Because it feels like you can just spin out and go anywhere in the world. But if you just think about it for a second, it's like, well, no, I mean, if I've got the first level default of C major that I want to go to, there's really only one way to confirm that, and that's the 5 to 1. So you got to end up somehow on a 5 chord. And then how do you get to the 5 chord? And it's just, using these sequential harmonic patterns, using common chord modulation, pivot chord modulation.
So when you say the 5, are you talking about the 5 of the tonic, the minor tonic?
No, I'm saying the new 5. So you're modulating. Once you modulate, then the new 5 is that G7 chord or G major. And I'm saying the only way to confirm that modulation is you've got to end up at this G chord somehow. That's kind of your goal. I mean, your ultimate goal is the C major because you're moving to 3 as a key area. But in terms of harmonically within the transition, you've got to figure out how to get to this 5 chord. Because once you can get to this 5, which is the new 5 of C major, then your modulation in effect is complete. Your transition has done its job.
Right, to the subordinate C major.
To the subordinate
Perfect.
key C major.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think you've got a good start here. I'm not sure if you're planning on writing for violins and cello in here and flute. It may be easier if you delete these from Finale and just work out the core of your music in piano first, and then figure out how can you add a flute. How can you add an additional element here? It may be that this melody right here you give to the flute, and you have the cello hitting this, the E down here, and then the piano does this, and the violins are doing nothing at this point. Or maybe, it becomes all the strings and the flute are doing this, and the piano rests. And then once this part comes in here, the piano picks up that part. And then it becomes a matter of orchestration. But I think starting as simple as you can and working to complexity, at least while you're in the learning phase and you're using this as a learning piece, is a much better plan than starting with a full score with all the instruments on there, trying to work out what your accompaniment is from bar 1 while you're still trying to figure out your harmony and your melody. As much as you can
so
split
I was kind of, I guess, going back and forth because you mentioned in one of your blogs or one of your lessons about Mahler's sketches how he'd have 4 voices.
Yeah.
And then, I would try and just do the piano thing, but then I would hear, it'd be nice to hear a flute here or a violin there.
Yeah.
So I was thinking those had an influence on how I was composing.
Yes.
So that's why I put them in. But I'm going to back out of that for now and just use this as a working piece.
Yeah.
Because,
another thing to think about too with Mahler, and it's funny you bring up Mahler again, because I went to Mahler's Ninth Symphony last night, played by the USC Symphony Orchestra, which is an amazing orchestra. I was absolutely blown away. It was a free concert, which is nice, and we were in the second row, right in front of the first violin, so we had amazing seats. And the students at USC are some of the best players in the world, kind of up and coming best players. And it was just an amazing. I've never been to the 9th live. So far, I've been to the 1st, the 6th, and I've been to the 1st. I've been to the 6th. I think that's it. 1st, 6th, and 9th now live. So, and then I've listened to all the symphonies a lot. But it's important to keep in mind with Mahler that we're looking at his sketches and we're using this as like, man, this guy could write hour-long symphonies and sketch form and stuff. He was a master of orchestration, a master of composition. I mean, he really is a musical genius. He grew up playing piano. He, went to the conservatory in Vienna. He was taught composition lessons in counterpoint by Bruckner. He was friends with Brahms. I mean, he is an amazing conductor too. I mean, I just read in his biography, which I'm still making my way through, that Brahms, he was impressed with his conducting of Don Giovanni, and in fact, Brahms had been quoted as saying he doesn't like to go to performances of Don Giovanni because they never do it right, and he prefers to stay home and just read the score and imagine it in his mind. So, he gave Mahler props on how he conducted. And as a conductor, I don't know if you've ever had any chance to conduct, but when you sit down to study a score, I mean, you just spend so much time looking at the music, trying to imagine the phrasing, practicing cueing and knowing where the entrances are. So he had so much exposure to this music that for him to sit down and do a 4-line sketch, he's kind of in another plane
Oh yeah, yeah, for
we
sure.
are in
Yeah,
terms of compositional abilities, and that's where we're working towards.
yeah,
But he started as a little kid and as a young man writing pieces for piano, I'm sure, and writing pieces for piano and one instrument, just like everybody else. And in
yeah. I think
fact, he destroyed almost all of his student compositions. They don't exist. And he wanted to hide them, and he's like, this is garbage.
yeah, yeah. I take some solace, and I don't know if you ever read Outliers by
I have, yes.
yeah. So just that idea of these, we look at these great artists, or not just artists, but great people who have achieved so much, and it's a combination of the talent, the time, and the circumstances. So,
Yes.
but
Yeah,
I've got a long way to go before I get up to my 10,000 hours.
yeah. So we all do. And I always feel like, I'm going to do it this year. I'm going to spend a lot more time doing it. And I get pulled in a million different directions, and I never spend the amount of quality time that I would like to. Really working on my weaknesses and working on my strengths. The thing, it's important to work on your
Yeah.
strengths too, because that's what kind of makes you special. So, um, yeah. But I think you're on a good start here, and sonata form is difficult. And I'm reading a book right now on Mahler's use of sonata form and the way he changed it, the way he would, bend the ways we would expect. And it's really interesting because throughout all his symphonies, all the way up to Symphony Number 10, he was still basing a lot of his ideas in, the first movements of 9 and 10, which obviously he didn't complete his 10th symphony. He was basing these on kind of proto, sonata form ideas. But up through symphonies 1 through 6, I mean, he, even in Symphony Number 6, is his most classical sonata form. It's like very clear cut, main theme, subordinate theme, moving to the, 5 as a key area. He really follows it in a classical way, so I think it's a very viable form for us to use, and it's a great learning tool. And you've got people to measure against, so you can look at
Yeah.
Mahler's use, you can look at Beethoven's, you can look at Mozart's, Haydn's, Prokofiev's, Shostakovich, Ravel. They all use this form. Chopin, Liszt, everybody did it. So you've got a lot of measuring sticks. Even Corleone. Corleone's got sonatas. So, and symphonies and things like that. So modern composers are still using it. Now it gets very, very different the further you go, obviously. Mahler's use of sonata form is drastically different from Mozart's, for the most part, in a lot of his symphonies. But
Yeah,
looking at
Handel.
those differences,
I came across one that Handel did for flute and piano, and
uh-huh,
it's basically like 3 movements, and there's some, I think, small ternary in there,
yeah,
and it's different. It seems different than the sonata form we're studying here.
it is.
But I guess that's another,
He's Baroque.
like, and then he had different, like, he would start off and say allegro, then would go into largo, and then I think he had one called Siciliana or something. But
Yeah.
like, it was definitely, it just seemed it's called a sonata, but it didn't seem to be the same type of
Well,
form.
and what we're studying is classical. So he is Baroque. He's a Baroque composer,
Oh,
and
okay.
these types of sonatas really started with, kind of right after Bach. So you look at Bach's children, J.C. Bach, for instance. was one of Mozart's teachers. And you can start to hear where the more homophonic types of music, this chordal music with a melody in the right hand, versus, that kind of contrapuntal type sounds. Those start to go out of fashion, and it becomes more about the overall harmonic development of your piece as opposed to the in-depth counterpoint, but there's a lot of things that get carried over. So you may see fugal type writing within development sections, kind of this tour of keys that was very common in Baroque music. That gets carried over, and that's really what development sections do a lot. But yeah, this is a moving target, and what we're doing here is we're just picking a definitive time. We're saying we're looking at we're more than that. We're picking a definitive piece. We're saying we are looking at Beethoven's Sonata number 1, movement number 1, and we're going to pull apart what he did. Now, if you move to Sonata number 2, you're going to be like, what the heck? This is totally different. Yes, it is. There's a lot of ways that you can do this, and that's why music is, still, there's so many pieces written in tonal idioms that sound drastically different, because there's lots of ways. And what you do is you end up having the tools of being able to analyze a piece in sonata form, and analyze the melody, analyze the harmony and the accompaniment, and the overall development of the piece, and model it yourself if you'd like. You can copy it out by hand like we do in the course. And then you can internalize those things. So you may find that if you move from this piece and then all of a sudden you go to, Mahler Symphony number 4, you're going to see some corollaries, but you're going to see some differences, like the way he brings about his recapitulation. He doesn't quite do it in the same way that Beethoven does it, but it's still kind of a classical thing. But if you were to say move to Mahler Symphony number 9 and look at his first movement, which stays primarily in one, the tonic key, kind of moving between parallel minor and major, you're going to say, hey, this is drastically different. It's like, well, yeah, but this is also, 100 years later. So there's been a lot of development in music. But now if you take this and you look at a Mendelssohn piano sonata or a Schubert piano sonata, you're going to see a lot more similarities. So it's tools. It's building a tool set, and there's a lot of tools in music.
Yeah, and this point in time, we just have the advantage of being able to see everything that's been done up to now, right? So,
and the disadvantage. I mean, sometimes it's like it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. It could be, definitely.
But there's more theory, and there's more, kind of incredibly bright minds that are thinking about this stuff and writing books about it. And I think the next step for a lot of people after the academy is to, one, is just put in a lot of practice, but two, start branching out, doing your own analysis of pieces that are not analyzed by me or other people. And to find books that sound interesting. Like I found this, Mahler's Symphonic Sonatas book, which, I saw it, I'm like, I want that. That is the book for me. That's exactly what I wanted. But there's other books about Mahler that are really interesting. There's books about Beethoven that are interesting. There's competing theories.
Yeah, I think your course is kind of it's bringing that world to people that ordinarily wouldn't be able to access it. It's making that, because it just seems so academic and theoretical and complicated. And, when you do study it in the kind of this manner, it's not, so it's like your course is kind of a bridge in that sense. It's making it accessible.
Yes, that's exactly what I want, is make it accessible. And once, in the Sonata Theory book, which I actually got right here, cut out my thing here. This book right here, which I'm not sure if you can see in the camera, it's a dense book. it's 600 and something pages, 630 pages, something like that, of the actual text, and they make a point that everybody reads from the level that they're at. So the first time I picked this up, I was like, oh my gosh, I just don't get it. But I spent a lot of time with classical form, and I spent a lot of time with analyzing classical form by William Kaplan, and I've spent more time in the music. And now when I pick it up, it's like, okay, I get like 70% of it. And then there's still a significant portion that's like, I'm going to have to reread it and reread it in order to get it. But the Mahler book that I'm reading right now is based off of this theory and not this theory, although they do intertwine a little bit. And he's explaining things in a different way that's making more sense. And now when I relook at this book, it's like, oh, I get what they're saying. So the more you read, the more you think about it, the more you raise your base level of understanding, and all of a sudden a whole new world of theory opens up to you. That's not to say that there's not some bad theory books out there that are just like, no thank you.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, it's not that all classical music is great either.
There's a lot of
then you
bad
get into
music.
issues of style and things like that, and
Yeah.
it's yeah, music is such a great thing.
Yeah. And, listening a lot, it's just like, I can't help it, and I'm sure you're the same way. It's like I try to listen to a lot of different music, but I always go back to the ones that I really like. I listen to a lot of Mahler. I listen to a lot of Beethoven. I listen to a lot of John Williams. I try to listen to a lot of everybody else, but if I'm just like, I'm going to just put on some music and start typing things and thinking, I go back to the stuff that I really like that is special and meaningful to me. But,
Yeah.
okay, well, we've been on here for a long time. Let's see who else joined us here. Benjamin joined us. I don't see his microphone. So, hello, Benjamin. Sorry I didn't get to talk to you this morning. I hope you enjoyed the symposium. And I actually have to get going here because I got to go down into LA here in about an hour. So, but I think this has been good. It's been fun to work through a transition. We haven't really got into sonata form for the symposiums yet. So I think it's been a good topic to talk about. And yeah, Richard, let me know how that works out for you. And I would say get into the workbook, get into the videos in the course. I just finished the lessons on the development. So those are, the development's a fun section. Really, you start to kind of get a little bit more crazy in terms of modulations, where you go with things.
Yeah. That's what I want to do. Sure.
I would say the book is fine, but that was written in 2012, and I'm still creating the sonata form course. I mean, the last lesson was finished about a week ago, so it's my latest ideas on how to explain this stuff.
Okay, well, much appreciated. I'm going to keep plugging away here, and yeah, it's great.
Okay, well, this was fun. I will talk to you later.
All right. Have a good day.
Bye.